Chapter 3. The Presence of Fear.
Trock, you're up first. Show me what you got.
Trock walked up to the mark the captain had made on the ground and began to build up a huge burst of flame.
Idiot, you're gonna tire yourself out with that crap.
To hell with this!
Trock shouted as he blasted the flame. The fire began to shrink gradually as it traveled through the air, until eventually the flame was only large enough to hit one of the targets.
That was a bold move. In order to keep a flame that large burning, one must have an incredible amount of energy.
Damn it!
Riza, you're up next.
Riza walked over to the range. She gave a slight chuckle before blasting 5 consecutive bolts of fire. While it was an impressive feat, she only managed to hit 3 of the targets. Riza walked away with a smirk on her face, her arms and legs clearly trembling.
Up next is Marz.
I still don't know why I'm being compared to the rest of these simpletons.
Yeah. Quit your yapping and get on with it.
Marz began to close his eyes. He held his hand out and created a small flame. Suddenly, the small flame had become a huge ring in front of him. He was using his abnormality to control the flame to his will. 5 separate bolts of fire were launched, and one after another they all hit.
And that's a perfect score.
What? That's cheating!
Captain, I think you should try again.
Hey, dimwits. He never set up any other rules.
That is true. I never specified in what way you must hit all 5 targets. I just said you have to hit them from a certain distance.
Marz looked back and began to taunt me.
It's your move, Prince.
Either way, Blade, you're up next.
You've got this. I tried to give him some words of encouragement, but he just shrugged it off and walked towards the range. The air around us became silent, and Blade remained still for a second. He took a deep breath and placed his hand out. The first shot hit its mark. Blade began to pant. He was already running out of energy. He continued. His next shot also hit a target. However, this time the flame was much smaller. He was on the verge of collapsing. This was the moment I had realized that Blade wasn't just this natural-born prodigy who could do anything. He had his struggles too, but I had never realized it up until then. Instead, I just continued to envy him for his great skills. Seems pretty similar to the situation I'm in, huh? After the third blast, Blade had fallen to the ground. His flame dissipated and became a cloud of smoke. I quickly walked up to him and helped him up. Are you all right?
I'll be fine. Sorry, I should have probably hit one more. We're at 11. You think you can hit the last 4?
Yeah, sure.
Mystery, it's your turn.
I hope you're ready for another perfect score.
Nah, he's gonna try to play it off again.
To be perfectly honest, I had no idea how I was going to go through with it. I had nearly depleted all of my energy, so I wasn't sure whether I would be able to exert enough flame, much less land every shot. As soon as I arrived at the range, I placed my hand out and created a small flame. Everyone remained silent and had their eyes locked onto me. I began. My first blast traveled through the air smoothly and managed to hit the mark. Okay, that's one. I held my breath. My next flame became sporadic, and so the blast was very unstable. Only the corner of the target was hit.
Here we go again.
There were so many things going through my head. My position as a prince, my sudden increase in rank, my fight against Blade, my grandfather, my argument with Marz, and hope. Why her? Why, of all people, why now? Hope was an old friend of mine. Unlike everyone else I had known, she didn't treat me like others had. For a moment in time, she didn't even know I was the prince. We were best friends, almost inseparable. Almost. At that moment, something inside me ticked. Once again, my vision had become red, and I couldn't seem to control my body. I began to hear muffled shouts.
A mystery?
Everyone was staring at me.
Can you continue?
I heard the captain shouting at me, but I couldn't quite make out what he was saying. With everything going through my mind at once, I wasn't able to think straight. My arm rose up, and I saw a huge burst of flame being projected from my own hand. At the trajectory it was going, it wouldn't have hit anything. My hand stopped trembling, and my senses became normal again. The flame I blasted had suddenly split into 5 separate pieces, and each honed in on a target. All 5 targets were simultaneously hit and knocked down. I turned around to look at the rest of the group. They were all left in utter shock.
Wonderful! That's another perfect score. And with that, it makes 16 targets. You've all saved yourselves. 4 now, at least. Go ahead and rest up for now. We'll start up again in a few minutes.
Blade approached me.
You're still hiding that much from us, huh?
Don't let this get to your head. It was just a fluke. Nothing more.
You act as if you've never done something like that before.
I ignored him and walked over to Joule, who had just regained consciousness. You're finally awake. She crossed her arms and turned away from me. All right, I get it. I'm sorry.
You didn't tell him, did you?
What? Of course not. I'm not that mean.
This is a serious matter! I need to be sure that I can trust you!
Don't worry about it so much. Either way, Blade isn't the most attentive person when it comes to these sort of things. He can hardly keep a conversation going.
That's not true! He's really nice and he always listens to me when I talk to him!
Talk to him? You mean murmur?
If anyone, you're the mean one.
Well, I can call him over, if you'd rather talk to him.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Yo, Blade!
I heard no response.
Maybe he's just meditating?
It wasn't just Blade, but even Marz and the captain had become quiet for the past few minutes. It's like they had noticed something we didn't, while the rest of us simply continued to chatter amongst ourselves. Something's wrong. Joule had also gone silent. All of a sudden, I got a huge chill down my spine, and I broke out into a cold sweat. The skies above us became dark, and clouds began to form all around. Everyone remained silent and still. The tension around us grew stronger, and we could feel the danger that was fast approaching. We began to hear a siren coming from the top of the guard tower.
Everyone clear the perimeter!
What the hell is going on?
There's no time to explain. Trock, Riza, Marz, I need you 3 to evacuate everyone inside the academy. We're short on staff, so you 3 should focus on protecting everyone.
What about us?
I need you 3 to head towards the noble territory and call for backup.
We all began to see a huge horde of Grewks emerge from the forest behind us. Grewks are a species of creatures indigenous to the planet of Neptar. These creatures were rarely ever seen traveling in packs, but were known to be hyper-aggressive towards people. For large kingdoms such as Torn, Grewks never really pose much of a threat. However, within the last few years, their activity levels had suddenly begun to spike for some strange reason. Before this day, I had never seen one in person. Usually, any Grewk that would approach the kingdom was quickly taken care of by my grandfather. However, right now there wasn't much we could do. This was the largest scale attack to date, and my grandfather had gone off to Hearth for the day. We had to rely on the royal army, which was stationed near the castle grounds, quite a ways away.
Are you going to be alright?
From what I could tell, there were around 50 of them, way too many for any one person to take on.
Don't worry about me, just go call for backup. I can hold them off for now. I'm about to show you why I'm the captain of the royal army.
Captain Strek then blasted a huge bolt of fire into the crowd, breaking their formation.
We need to go, now.
Can both of you move all right?
Not as well as I would like.
I'm also quite exhausted, but we can't worry about that right now.
Well, we better get moving. The noble territory was on the opposite side of the kingdom. With such a long distance between us, we were bound to run into a few guards along the way. We notified them about the attack and continued on our way to the Royal Army barracks. As we reached a small, desolate neighborhood, Blade began to walk slower.
Hold on.
What's the matter? Blade stopped dead in his tracks and had unsheathed his sword.
Something's not right. Keep your guard up.
He was right. Many of the buildings around us had scratch marks on them, and the ground looked like it had been tread on. Did one of them get through?
Joule, watch out!
Blade had shouted as he ran up and pushed her out of the way of an attack. A Grewk had suddenly dropped down from one of the buildings around us. The creature began to stand up and stare at us menacingly. It had what seemed to be a sword in place of its right arm. It had bone-like spikes throughout its face, and no eyes or mouth whatsoever, but I could still hear it breathing aggressively through 2 holes on the side of its face. The strangest part about this Grewk, however, was that its skin was a pale white as opposed to their typical gray. Are you alright?
I'm fine. This one is different from the rest of them. It read my movements.
The Grewk had landed a clean hit on Blade. You two should go on ahead. I'll hold him off long enough for both of you to call for reinforcements.
We can't just leave you alone. You'll...
She stopped short. She didn't want to reveal the fact that I wasn't actually as strong as everyone else thought I was. Throughout all these years, I've been trying to reveal the truth about my power to everyone. Who would have thought that at the first opportunity I got, I would be too scared to say anything? Was this the right thing to do at the moment? I honestly don't know. If he manages to slow us down, we'll never be able to call for backup. You two need to go.
Just be careful.
Yeah, don't worry. I can handle this one. Yeah, right. There was no way I could actually take on one of these creatures. However, I was the only one that could hold him back long enough. Blade still looked exhausted from the earlier training, and Joule didn't seem to have much energy left. For some strange reason, I had somehow regained all the energy I previously expended. As the Grewk began to stare at the others, I blasted a small spark of flame in its direction, drawing his attention towards me. It let out a huge screech. My ears felt like they were about to start bleeding. It began to let out a small cloud of ash from the holes on the side of its face, after which its limbs began to crack as it took a step forward. This Grewk seemed to actually have a mind of its own. All of the others were like feral creatures. Now run! I managed to leap a great distance towards the creature.
Don't just approach recklessly!
The Grewk had prepared a counterattack. As I approached it, the creature began to swing its sword towards me. I tilted my head and struck its face with all of my strength. The creature had been knocked down.
Are you alright?
Why the hell are you still here? I told you to leave! I touched my cheek. I was bleeding. He just managed to graze me, but I was already in a lot of pain. I told you, I've got this, so go! She began to tear up, but luckily she ran off with Blade. The Grewk began to stand up. Its limbs once again cracked as it regained its balance. It let out another screech. Would you shut up already? I blasted another bolt of fire towards it. The Grewk deflected the attack and began to run towards me. I managed to dodge his first attack, but he followed through with a kick, which sent me tumbling to the ground. You know, now that I think about it, this might have been a mistake. I jumped back up and continued to dodge the Grewk's onslaught of attacks. I began to look at my surroundings to try to find a way to defeat this thing. There was no way I could fight this creature head-on. Relentless with its assault, the Grewk jumped towards me with a huge downward slash. I managed to catch his sword with my bare hands and began to pour out blood. While the sword itself was fairly dull, the entire thing was layered with sharp bone-like segments. Nevertheless, I pushed forth through the pain and delivered another strike straight to its gut. The Grewk then backed off. Both my face and my hands were gushing out blood. but the creature once again rushed towards me. I had just about hit my limit. I took one last breath, placed my hand forth, and expelled every last drop of flame energy left within me. I was left with nothing. I couldn't even take a single step forward, but the Grewk had survived, and it looked pissed.
Weak!
Damn it! The Grewk walked towards me and began to lift me by the head with its sword placed on my neck. It drew blood. I punched the Grewk repeatedly in desperation, but my punches had no effect. I was completely out of strength. My arms went limp. As my vision began to fade, I heard someone unsheathe the sword, and with one clean swipe, the Grook's entire left arm was sliced off, which dropped me to the ground.
I've got this. Now rest up.
I heard a familiar voice call out to me. I turned around and saw Blade standing next to me, beaten and battered. Where's Joule?
Don't worry. She went ahead and warned the guards. They should arrive shortly. She told me the truth about you. Damn it! You should have said something earlier!
Don't blame me. It's your fault for not believing me.
You die!
At this point, it had become furious. With its left arm gone and all it had left was its sword, both Blade and the Grewk clashed several times before any one of them could land a strike. The sound of swords clanging could be heard all throughout the streets. Blade was clearly at a disadvantage. Even with its arm gone, the Grewk was simply too powerful for either of us. Blade took a quick step back, and he placed his sword back in his sheath. "What are you doing?" He gestured to me to be quiet and let him focus. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Once the Grewk began to move towards him, Blade instantly drew his sword and swung with all his might. The attack struck the Grook's torso, but the creature simply took the hit and continued to charge forth.
Weak!
Come on, just a bit more time. Hold on a bit longer.
He was speaking to himself in order to keep from giving up, but his willpower was starting to diminish. I began to stand up. Maybe I can conjure up that power I used earlier.
What are you doing?
I have a plan. Just give me some time.
Well, you'd better hurry up. I can't hold him back for much longer.
I clenched my fist as hard as I could. The blood began to drip off of my hand. At this point, my entire body began to tremble, but nothing came of it. It's not working. Once again, many things went through my mind. This fight, my hopeless struggles, and the fact that Blade was counting on me. That was the answer. Something inside me had ticked, but not to the extent I would have liked. While my vision was beginning to turn red, all of my energy was still gone.
We could really use that plan of yours right about now. Why don't you try to use that power from earlier?
I can't get it to work.
Well, what did you do last time?
I'm not sure. My mind just began jumping from thought to thought, and I couldn't seem to think straight.
Do you think it could have something to do with your emotions?
I'm not sure.
Well, then I apologize in advance, but it's our only shot.
What are you talking about?
We've known each other since we were kids, right?
Yeah? What are you trying to get at?
You thought that no one would notice your drastic change. We might have not been the best of friends, but even I could tell that something had been bothering you for a long time. You were always so full of energy, and then one day, all of that just changed. It was like you had become someone else.
Shut up. Don't start this. Not you too.
I asked Sigil, and he told me a bit about it. Hope was very important to you, wasn't she?
Important to me?
What happened between you and Hope?
I can't relive that. Not again. All I could hear was the sound of swords clashing as the fight continued. Almost every single sound became muffled, and a single tear rolled down my eye. The ground below us began to tremble, and many of the buildings around us started to come crashing down.
Mystery!
Blade had left the fight and ran over to me.
What's happening?
I couldn't respond. It was like my body was frozen. My heartbeat began to speed up, each beat more intense than the last. I managed to move my arms slightly, and I struck my chest with all my might in an attempt to snap out of it. As I did, a huge wave of power surged throughout my entire body, and I was once again in full control. My vision was no longer red, but I still felt a large amount of power emanating from inside me.
What's going on? Talk to me. Why are your eyes red?
This surge of power.
I thought you said you weren't hiding any of your power.
To be honest with you, I'm not too sure what this is.
So much talking!
We'll continue this later. As I ran up to the Grewk, it backed up slightly, and for a moment, it wouldn't attack me.
What the hell is this?
Shortly after, however, the Grewk began to violently swing his sword around. His movements almost seemed like they were in slow motion. I could react to everything he did in an instant. The moment I counterattacked, the Grewk was sent straight through a building. Jeez! What the hell is this power?
You will die!
Finally starting to form proper sentences, huh? The Grewk stood up and began to chuck large pieces of rubble towards me.
He's getting desperate. You need to finish him off, now!
I cocked my arm back and launched a ball of fire. The Grewk took a huge step forward as it sliced right through the flames.
Useless!
The creature began to charge towards me and managed to land a clean strike across my face. What? Are you kidding me? Is this still not enough? My energy was dispersing fast, and the Grewk didn't seem like it would give up any time soon. I took a huge step forward and leaped up high into the air. I spun my entire body around and kicked the Grewk away from me. For a while after that, we continued to trade attacks. Blow after blow, the Grewk managed to match me in strength. Even after my considerable boost in power, I just couldn't seem to get the upper hand on him. As the fight continued to drag on, I had gotten exceedingly more injuries all the while. The Grewk just became more and more fierce. Without regard for anything around him, he continued to swing his sword in front of himself. There was no escaping this creature's bloodlust. It had its sights set on killing me. My arms and parts of my body were cut a few times before I backed away from him. I was starting to run on fumes, and once again I had just about hit my limit. The creature chucked a piece of debris towards me, and I was suddenly knocked to the ground. As the Grewk jumped towards me to land the finishing blow, it suddenly froze in midair. Time felt like it had stopped for a second. Not just the Grewk, but everything around me. The wind, the debris, even Blade had stopped. However, I was still in full control of my body. I jumped back up and took a quick step back. And right as time reverted back to its normal state, I began to hear a shout.
Move out of the way!
He had parried the Grewk's attack and left me with a clear opening. Without hesitation, I once again expended every last bit of energy I had left inside me and blasted the Grewk away. I had collapsed on the floor, and the great boost of power which I had gotten had all but disappeared.
Is that it?
We began to hear growls and screeches from under the rubble. You've got to be kidding me. The Grewk was still alive. As it broke free, it instantly targeted Blade and ran towards him, blinded with anger. However, before either of us could react, the Grewk was struck by a bolt of lightning and was paralyzed dead in its tracks.
Joule?
Oh, thank goodness! We made it in time!
I was still on the ground, unable to even lift a finger, but I began to hear a very familiar voice behind us.
Man, back when I was your age, I was taking out hordes of these guys, and you can't even take out one.
It was Sigil. Glad you're here, old man.
Hey now, I'm not that old. Now let me take care of this mess so we can get on our way.
Sigil placed his warhammer down and began to stretch. He cracked his back and his neck.
It's been ages since I've gotten a good workout.
The Grewk took a small step back.
What? You scared?
Sigil began to walk towards the creature. The Grewk was badly injured. He was missing a hand, and he had many cuts and bruises all over his body. It approached Sigil.
Oh, don't make me laugh. Look at you. You already got a foot in the grave as it is.
We knew the fight was over the moment it began. During the Grewk's last moment, it charged towards Sigil, and with all the strength he had, but it wasn't enough. He was instantly smashed into the ground, and his body had turned to dust.
That was just one strike.
We should go check up on the captain.
Say, how many of them were there?
There were around 50 of them.
What, 50? That's child's play for old Strek. You all should have just stood back and watched them.
Old Strek?
Is the captain really that powerful?
Of course. There's a reason I chose to give him the position after I retired.
You never told me that you were once captain of the Royal Army.
There's a lot of things you don't know about me, kid. I was even in line to become a Royal Knight, but I turned the offer down. Seemed like too much work for me.
Oh, you just had to bring that up. Now you're just mocking me. You know I want to become a Royal Knight someday.
Yeah, and you won't shut up about it either. Well, let's go see what old Strek is up to. By the way, where'd your granddad head off to? It's strange to think something like this would happen with him around.
He said he needed to go to Hearth to run some errands or something like that. It was too early for me to remember. Suddenly, we began to feel the ground below us shake.
What's going on?
There's a huge surge of power coming from the training grounds.
What? How can you tell?
Don't tell me you kids haven't learned to sense someone's presence yet.
Yeah, I feel it.
So do I.
What? Am I the only one who has trouble with that technique?
I can't tell if the surge of power is coming from the captain.
Nah, it's definitely someone else. Strek wouldn't just release this much power at once without a good reason. We need to head out, now.
As the entire kingdom continued to rumble, we all began to make our way to the training grounds, where we would soon find the source of this malicious power.